Good morning. I'm Steve Ferrace, Director of Marketing and Member Relations for Suburban West Realtors Association. And on behalf of the association, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar. Our webinar series is intended to bring you informative sessions on topics that are essential to your real estate career. Please note that we are able to bring value-added programs to our members like this and our upcoming Starbucks morning seminars because of the tremendous support we receive from our affiliate members. I would like to especially thank Simone Cartwright of Abundant Home Inspection Services for her sponsorship and support of today's webinar program. Today's session, ZipForm Plus Beyond the Basics, is being recorded and will be available on the Suburban West Realtors Association's website shortly after the completion of the webinar under our webinar series archive section underneath the Education tab on our homepage. You also will receive an evaluation that'll have a direct link to that page where you can access the recording. Today's program is due to run from 10 a.m. to 11:30 a.m. And throughout the program, you are going to be able to pose some questions, and our presenter, Chris Lally, will be able to tell you a little bit more about that as he starts up his program. So, without further ado, let me turn the program over to today's presenter, Chris Lally, who is a training specialist for ZipLogic, the creators of the ZipForm platform. So, Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Steve. And thanks for giving us the opportunity to present in front of all of your members of the association. So I just wanted to, hopefully everyone's ready to get ready and learn, and hopefully we're going to have a good time today. We have a little bit of ground to cover, but that's okay. We're going to be all the way through it, and hopefully, again, please feel free to ask any questions as you move forward. That's what I was trying to get through. So let's get into the GoToWebinar options. Okay, so I just want to briefly mention that, and also give another moment for everyone to kind of get themselves in and ready to go. We have the Show Hide panel in the upper left-hand corner. That's the orange arrow icon. It allows you to collapse or expand the panel at your ease. I know sometimes if you want to collapse it, you can view more of the right screen. You can always expand it back out, primarily to use the question or chat features below, which is where you're going to be able to interact with me directly today. So hopefully we have a lot of good questions today. To the right of that is the audio mode options, where you can use or listen into today's webinar via two different ways. The first way is telephone, where you dial in, and the second way is using mic and speakers, like I am here today. And then right below that is the volume controls. I'm sure everyone has a pretty good working understanding of how volume control works, so just adjust it based off your own personal preferences. And again, one final note is that the question box or the chat features below are the primary mode of communication. So please feel free as we move through today's webinar to ask any and all questions you have. I will do the best I can to answer them as we move forward. If it's something I feel that I can't answer right now, I will certainly get back to you, or I will answer at the end of the webinar if it doesn't necessarily pertain to our topics today. So again, welcome everyone to today's webinar. I'll use Suburban West Realtors. And today we're going to be going over your AOR and as well as your NAR member benefits. And a lot of those would include particularly the ZipForm Plus navigation, the platform itself, and you also get two additional more subtle member benefits that kind of fall in the background that are seamlessly integrated, and those two would be called ZipTMS and ZipVault. Okay, TMS would be your transaction management system, and Vault is that storage solution. Okay. Then we're going to, after a brief navigation of the platform, we're going to take a dive into some more of the advanced features, particularly on the Transactions Home landing page, and a few other little neat tips and tricks I'm going to show you along the way. Then we're actually going to take a dive into the DocuSign integration, where we're going to be able to explore that. We're going to follow the 3 steps of the standard e-signing process with ZipForm Plus, and we're going to see what that looks like at the end of it. And then we're going to take a look at ZipForm Mobile, where you're going to be able to see what the difference is between ZipForm Plus and accessing ZipForm Plus on a mobile device. At the end of the day, it is a facsimile of ZipForm Plus, but it just shrunk down to the screen size, and you're going to see that you'll have the same functionality and the same great features available to you, but it is just more of a shrunk down screen. And then finally, we're going to look at MLS Connect, where I'm going to do a demo of MLS Connect. The idea here, as well as the rest of these integrations as other products like ZipForm Mobile or TouchSign, which is an offshoot of Digital Ink, but we're actually going to be diving into DocuSign today. The intention here is that everything is meant to be a time saver. Okay, so let's get into the webinar. So you guys have access to get into your ZipForm Plus account through zipformplus.com. There's other modes of getting into the ZipForm Plus room, I like to call it, many different doors of accessing it, but the one primary way is through zipformplus.com, and you just simply enter your username, your password, and then click the green sign in button. Okay, so I'm going to pull my account over here for you all to see. Let's make this a touch bigger for you guys. Okay, so what happens when you first log into your ZipForm Plus account? You fall on what we call the Transactions Home landing page, which displays all of your transactions from most recently modified to the furthest out modified. Okay, so and you're always able to change in terms of how you're able to view your transactions in two different ways. The first way is through the sort feature. Okay, which is if we click on this drop down here, which is right underneath import and templates, you're able to sort your transactions from either created date, first and last name, or even closing date or approval. There's a lot of different nifty ways to organize your transactions. When I used to work in a customer care or help desk center, I used to see a lot of intuitive ways and inventive ways that agents or brokers used to be able to organize their transactions in, like I said, a pretty cool different way. The other way you can view your transactions, and this is a little bit more subtle way, is changing the view of how you see your transactions. Right now they're in a grid or tile view where you see the picture displayed nicely and like almost a manila folder type idea where you have all of your transactions and your forms and everything right in a nice neat folder here. That other way is through a list view. Okay, and I personally like this view. It is a little bit easier to obviously demo it in the other way, the grid view, simply because it's a little bit bigger. But I do like to showcase this, particularly because of the retention date on the far right. And the reason I say that is because this is that Zip Vault part of your NAR transaction management benefits, that subtle feature I mentioned at the very beginning, is you get ZipForm Plus, you get Zip TMS, and you get Zip Vault. So Zip Vault, you can see this live in action. It tells me that this particular transaction, albeit this is a test transaction, is going to be removed from my account on March 27th of 2026. Okay, so that just at a glance, you get to see how long your data gets stored within the cloud, which would be ZipForm Plus in this particular case. Okay, I'm going to switch back to grid view for a quick moment. Now, the primary mode of where you want to be focusing, the focal point of ZipForm Plus is this dark blue bar, which is called the navigation bar. Okay, it goes from the far left, which is the dashboard, all the way to the help tab on the far right. And we're going to just take a brief navigation of that really quickly. So if I click on dashboard here, we get to view all of that Zip TMS data at a glance for us and at ease for us. Okay, so you can see starting in the upper left-hand corner, these are metrics or values that are garnered through your transaction data that you input into that transaction. And there's 4 key pieces of information that you want to enter into any transaction in order to get this quarterly sales, commission, closed transactions, and fell through all calculated accurately. Because we want accurate information, right, in order for this stuff to be calculated correctly. Starting with quarterly sales, you can see that this quarterly sales resets every quarter, and it falls back down to 0, and you also get to see a little progress at the top right below quarterly sales or in between quarterly sales and the actual value itself, just to see how well you're doing between quarters and comparatively between last year as well. And then to the right are the rest of the values, and they're all calculated in year to date. Okay, so commission, closed transactions, and fell through are all calculated annually. Now, the primary mode of how to get this particular set of data to calculate accurately is through that transactional pieces of information that you input, but you need primarily the transaction to be closed, that's one. Then you need a closing price, okay, or purchase price. You need a closing date, And then finally, you need a commission. So each one of these kind of has a little bit more specifics of those four, but as a whole, you want all four of those categories to be entered into any transaction. And again, that's the status of the transaction to be closed, or in fell through's case, you want it to be labeled fell through. The second main thing is an actual closing date. Then there's a purchase price, and finally there's a commission. At any point, if you want to view a more detailed description of any one of these particular metrics, closed transactions or fell through, you have this report icon. It looks like a stock symbol. Well, we hope all our stocks are going up like that, right? But you can click on that, and then you get to view a more detailed description of everything that falls underneath the umbrella of closed transactions, where you can see any one of these transactions details at a glance, and even a more detailed description here. Okay, so you can see like this Woodbriar Square transaction. We have a purchase. We know when it was listed. We have an idea of the closing date, what it was listed for, what the purchase price was, and then we can see at the end, if we look at commission, we can see what our commission is. Okay, and now we also have the ability to switch the status of our reports. Right now, it's underneath closed transactions. We can always change that to say pending transactions, and then all we have to do is simply run the report. Okay, right now I have two pending transactions. I have the Sky Road transaction or Sheridan Road transaction. If I want to see what's going on with this particular transaction, all I have to do is simply click on it, and it'll launch me directly into that associated transaction. And maybe, for example, I know that this fell through, okay, because it looks like it was the closing date was a couple years ago, and I just need to modify this particular transaction. Well, I can go up to the top and click on the status, and then change it to fell through. And then it gives me this little icon that says, are you sure you want to reset the status to fell through? And yes, I do. And then I can go back to the dashboard by clicking the dashboard icon to the left. And then you can see my fell through transactions is now 2. Fortunately, we all go through that particular process sometimes where transactions fall through, but you can always change that status as well, okay, if you need to come back to it. So that's these metrics in the upper left-hand corner. Moving to the right of that, you have a launch pad, or one of the few launch pads we have in ZipForm Plus. View forms, manage transactions, and create a brand new transaction. And you have each one of these allows you to launch to a particular part within the platform where you can view forms. We'll take you to the All Forms area of your ZipForm Plus account where you can see your forms libraries. You can see the Pennsylvania Associated Realtors library here. You're always able to switch that just by clicking the drop down. Okay. That one in particular, when it comes to all forms, I always like to use the reference. If you're on the phone with an agent, corresponding agent, or maybe your boss, or even a client, and you just want to look at a form really quickly, or they're working on something and you don't recall what the form is, and say you're mobile, you can click on that View Forms button, and just at a glance you can look at what the form says, so you can assist them or tell them, hey, this is in progress, something like that. Then you also have Manage Transactions, which simply launches you to the Transactions tab on the navigation bar. And then creating a transaction is exactly what it sounds like, where you get to create a brand new transaction from your agent dashboard. And right below that is our graphs. Okay, there are 3 different solid graphs, 1 bar graph and then 2 pie graphs. Now this bar graph, which is potential sales volume, you have access just, again, and the idea here is to look at that TMS or transaction management data, which I alluded to a little bit a while ago, but the fact that all the data that you enter into a transaction gets transported into this nice little neat dashboard icon or tab, you get to see everything live kind of in action, which is kind of nice. As you saw, this value changed immediately as soon as we changed the actual metrics. Now, with potential sales volume and the other graphs, all I have to do is simply hover over that particular category like active or pending and see how many transactions are in fact of that particular category, like potential. For active, I see 7. For pending, now previously I had 2, but I changed one of the pending transactions to fell through, as you saw. And each one of these active listings or pending transactions come equipped with that report icon. So you can always click on that and then run that report. One last thing I want to mention on this report particular page is the fact that you can always export any one of the reports that you run to a CSV or Excel file. Okay, so if you have I was working with an agent a few weeks ago, and her boss was very Excel oriented. He loved entering data into an Excel spreadsheet, but he wasn't very familiar with the platform, and that's what they were there for. And I showed them this, and it was a life changer, in terms of what they were able to do with being able to run reports through a CSV or a Excel file. Okay. Now, right below that is tasks. The graphs are tasks, and you're given 3 different items to click on, and they're all hyperlinks, which, again, kind of anything you see in blue here allows you to jump to a particular portion of the platform or dives you a little bit deeper into the actual description, like the report icon, for example. But we have tasks not started, tasks in progress, or overdue tasks. If I simply click on either one of these, it launches me to this tasks tab on our navigation bar. And we're going to be getting to this in a little bit, but the idea here is that you get to see all of your tasks for the entirety of the platform. Okay, so we saw that we had some overdue tasks. I can simply click on those urgent tasks and say, for example, I know that these are completed or they are still in progress, and I just need to change the status. Well, one of the newer features we have is the ability to set status to multiple items at any point in time, where we can select on one of those. We have in progress here. Click on either one of these. Oh, sorry. Click on this. And then we can set the status where it's in progress, where we can change it to completed, and then simply click on the green apply, and it will make that appropriate change, as you see there. Okay. Or I can just use the traditional where I just simply click the drop down and change it to completed, and it decreases the number here automatically, as you see. And each one of the fields that we change is corresponding with a different color to make it a little bit easier to represent in terms of how we can view our tasks. And right now what you see below here, this is that board view. I personally like this board view because I like the columns. I like the neatness of columns where I get to see completed, needs review, in progress, or even not started. You can only change that to a checklist view, which is more like what you see here, just like this. Or we have a calendar view, which you can change your view on a calendar. Let me close out of this here real quick. And we can see either a month view here, a week view, or even day view. So just to keep yourself on task with completing these tasks. Okay. So now back, and you can see the very next thing I was going to talk about is actually recent activity. We have here a history of everything, of major events that are going on within the entirety of the platform. Okay, and if we want to view up to 90 days worth of significant events within my ZipForm Plus account, I can click on the See More icon and have access to, again, 90 days worth of major events that are going on within my transaction, which is quite useful. Because say your boss calls you, like, you were working on a transaction last week. What was it called? I just want to make sure everything's good with it, and I can close out of it. Well, it's this Bleecker Street transaction. Okay? Again, just at a glance, you can have access to the entirety of the platform. Now on the left side here, we have signature packets in progress, listings expired this month, transactions closed this month, and retentions ending. Each one of these has a different corresponding value that you can view, like signature packets in progress. This is a nice one because it tracks whether you're using ZipLogic DigitalLink or DocuSign, for example. It tracks those, where we can view how many signature packets are actually in progress. So we talked about transactions really quickly earlier, and then we're going to jump to templates next. Okay, but just to give everyone an idea of what a transaction is, if you're a little bit more newer to the system, a transaction is a collection or a combination of files, documents, whether they're internal or external. I'll show you the difference between the two a little bit later on, because we're actually going to, when we actually get to dive into the DocuSign integration, you're going to see the major difference between uploaded PDFs and internal PDFs. So that's what a transaction represents. It's just a combination of documents, files, checklists, what have you, in a nice, neat manila folder. That would be traditionally stored in a filing cabinet, right, the old school way, but this is just done so in a digital format. Now, templates. There's two things I really want to stress here with templates. The first is understanding templates, and we're going to just take a very brief exploration of templates, but templates is the best time-saving feature, in my opinion, that we offer at ZipForm Plus. That's internal. Okay, we have great products like MLS Connect, like one of the ones I'm going to show you, and the DocuSign integration is certainly useful, but the intention is to save ourselves time so we get to the point of the DocuSign integration, and then it makes it very quick and easy and simple. This, in my opinion, templates is the best one. The reason for that is because if we understand what a transaction is, we have a little understanding of what a template can do. So the idea behind templates is to use transactional data multiple times across either similar transactions or different kinds of transactions. So we have that unique set of files or forms or documents or checklists, and we can essentially copy and paste them into different transactions moving forward in the future that we're creating. We're using that data from the past. So we're recycling or repurposing this particular data, okay? Thus creating ourselves that time-saving functionality. So let's dive into a little bit so you maybe have a little bit more understanding of what I mean. So if I click on New, and you're presented with a couple questions. The first one is listing, purchase, lease, or lease listing. And this falls underneath the question number 1, which is what kind of template or transaction type you're creating. So this is identical to what you would look like if you create a transaction. Okay, so you're going to see echoes of this between transaction and templates. So let's just do a let's do purchase here, and then when we create it, actually let's just do a listing on this one. We're going to do listing in this particular case. And then we dive into the actual template name. And again, there's no particular naming scheme that we have. I'm just going to do something that's based off of the first 2 questions that I presented. So for example, the first question is what type of transaction or template I'm creating. I'm choosing listing. The second question I'm asked is what is the property type of that transaction or template type is being created. In this case, I'm going to choose residential. Okay, note the first 2 questions is displayed down here as well, and you're going to see that can change in a few moments when I get down to this category. Let's first cover scope though. Because say we have an understanding of what we're creating here. Where we're inside of our account and we're creating these templates to create ourselves time-saving capabilities in the long run, right? Well, what I want to be able to do with this particular template, if I'm in a broker admin or an office admin or a transaction coordinator style account with ZipForm Plus, you may have access to global or office. But because I'm in an individual agent account, I don't necessarily have access to it, but I'm going to explain what they do. So any account with ZipForm Plus is defaulted that you have access to personal. What that means is, again, underneath the umbrella of visibility here, it's telling me that this template is visible by me only. Okay, where Global and Office kind of dives into that sharing capability of templates. Where if I'm a broker admin or office admin, I can share this particular template I'm creating across a number of different offices I have, or a one singular particular office, which would be Office. Okay, so that's the 2 differences between Global and Office. But by default, you always have access to this personal. Because the idea here with templates is to make yourself have access to that time-saving capability, right? Right below that is auto apply. So the first and third are converses of each other. So let me briefly explain what the difference is between these 2. The first one says, do not automatically apply this template to brand new transactions. So if we want the ability to reuse or recycle a common set of data across multiple transactions, this one's telling me that I want the flexibility and customization to choose what I want to copy when. Okay. The third one is, like I said, the converse of that, where it eliminates the choice, where it's blanketly and indiscriminately applying to all new transactions. Well, both are certainly useful, and let me give you an example of the number 3 option here. If you're working in, say, the commercial real estate space, or say just the residential real estate space, and you only work on the listing or the purchase side, you can create a template that is very broad, and it covers all of your listing forms, because you only work in that one real estate space and you want to save yourself time, just like everyone does. You have a very common set of forms, and you just make it populate on every new transaction you create. Okay, so you copy those same 5 forms, checklists, documents, what have you, and you're on your way. The number 2 option here is automatically apply this template to listing/residential new transactions. So this is kind of combining the best of both worlds of number 1 and 3. And this is kind of that sweet spot where I kind of want like you all to kind of resonate or typically apply, is because you have that flexibility to be able to choose when you want something to be applied and to what specific categories. So you see that the first question I answered was listing, and the second question I answered was residential, right? So it's already limiting the style of transactions that are being applied to this template, right? So that's that TMS functionality working for you, which is really nice. You have something that when you create a transaction, you answer the first 2 questions, and you have the listing/residential template automatically being applied for you without you even having to click anything. Okay. So now, once I'm done, I'm making edits. I can click on Save. And then we have ourselves a template that we need to now create. So what we want to do here is add forms on the far right side of the screen. So we have a number of different applications that we can do with a listing residential template. Okay. I can choose the different libraries I want to add. Let's just say I'm going to, just for sake of demo purposes, I'm just going to use our library here. I'm going to go with a cover sheet. Now you guys have access to very similar forms, so the concept is the same. I'm going to go with the standard listing contract. Let's go with this option to purchase, and let's do this lead-based paint. Okay, and you're notified every time you add a form. And then when we're done adding our common forms, because these are forms that we want to repurpose, right? So we want to keep things relatively broad. So we don't want to have something too narrow and then have to kind of backtrack in a way, right? I'm going to click on the red X to exit out of that. Now I have these common forms. Now, what would make most sense for me to enter data into these forms? Well, the data that would make most sense is the static data that I would want to enter. Again, keeping with the theme of recycling and repurposing this, I want to be able to enter data that's not going to change. Okay? Well, what information do you think reasonably would not change? Buyer and seller information is certainly going to theoretically be changing from transaction to transaction, right? Well, seller information as well. But selling broker information and listing broker information, this is one of those things that we really don't, or we rather do want to populate in each one of the fields. This is something that's not going to be, rather we want it to be common, right? We want this to populate in every single one of the fields. So I'm going to just choose something like, say, ZipLogix Brokers here. Listing and street address, I'm just going to enter our street address here, 15 Mile. And you can see one of the other more subtle time savers, which is called Smarty Streets. Helps populate my fields. It verifies my address, and then it saves automatically for me. That's something that you guys have access to as well. That's every ZipForm Plus user. Or I have something that's this drop down, which I'm going to dive into a little bit later, which is all managed through a lookup field manager. And this information is common data that I've entered into multiple different categories at one point or time or another. Okay. Now, what other information do you think reasonably would want to populate or would not change? Okay. Over the course of multiple transactions. Property information theoretically will, right? Escrow information, lender information, appraisal, title, or attorney information. This can be kind of in that gray space, right? Where it may or may not. depending on the particular style of transaction or particular real estate space that you're working in. Say you do have a title company that you work with exclusively, well, we can enter that information here as well. I'm going to go with, let's do Independence Title. Let's go with this one here. You can see how quickly we're just simply entering some of this data here where it's saving ourselves quite a bit of time. And then we can click on Save. Now, one of the other aspects of ZipForm Plus that we have that's working always for you in the background is data population, okay, and automated data population from form to form and from tab to tab, okay. So I entered basic data into my cover sheet. Well, I'm going to go to my standard listing contract here, and I'm going to see some basic data entered into these forms, okay, which is exactly what I want. You see this listing broker information population here, or populated for me there. I also have my information down on the bottom left-hand corner. Okay. So also with parties, if I click on parties, I see my information and I see George Washington's information here for representing the title company. Okay. So again, information inside ZipForm Plus travels from form to form, frontwards and backwards, and tab to tab, frontwards and backwards. So it wouldn't have mattered if I create a transaction or a template and I start with parties, or I start with forms and then move to parties or what have you. It's going to populate frontwards and backwards. Okay. Now I always strongly recommend, and I can't stress it enough, with cover sheets. You guys have access to a cover sheet in Pennsylvania or even in Suburban West Realtors. You guys have an actual one as well. But this cover sheet here, if I would have added this cover sheet, it would have worked just as well. Okay, I'll even show you. I remove that. Just remove. Click on this one. We can see some of the data are going to populate for me. Okay. So it translates to its most relevant fields from form to form. Okay. Now let's create a basic checklist. So let me remove this cover sheet so we can just keep with that Pennsylvania. And I'm going to reorganize my forms here. Done. I'm going to click on checklist. Now I'm going to create a basic checklist. Again, because we're still in a template, I want to keep things relatively broad. So let's create a brand new checklist. And a checklist, the idea behind a checklist is keeping things in order. So you saw the tasks before. We have that idea of tasks. I'm going to create inspections category. Now underneath categories, we can have multiple categories underneath a singular checklist, but we can always rename this particular category. Say you only have one, you can always just name it the same thing like I'm doing here. Let's do this color here, this teal. Save. And then we're going to create a new task. And again, tasks, as you saw before, I'm able to manipulate. And again, it keeps me on point with making sure particular forms, relevant transaction due dates are all completed at their appropriate times. So what would be something that would be a common form that I've added already that would be underneath the category of inspections? Well, I have something that's the lead-based paint disclosure, right? Now, when it comes to due dates, one underneath here, so that's relevant to the tasks, I would like you all to kind of focus on this relative category. The reason is because fixed is the utmost specificity when it comes to an actual date. That's like saying you're going to the doctor's, but you're going to the doctor's today at 4 p.m. Well, the same event is not going to happen tomorrow at 4 p.m. along with the next day or the next day thereafter, right? So relative gives you a time window. So that's saying I'm going to make an appointment, I'm going to go to the doctor's in the next 2 weeks. Okay, we don't know when that particular appointment may be, but I'm going to, as soon as we find out, I'll have that 2-week time frame. I'm giving myself. Okay. So let's do 12 days. We can do before or after, and we select an actual relevant transaction due date here. So we can do listing date, closing, date of contract. Let's just do date of contract in this case. We want this required. Let's say yes. We want to assign a responsible party to it. I'll assign myself. I can always be notified here. Now the cool thing here is attaching documents. And we're going to be able to select an existing document here. So we have our lead-based paint disclosure. We're going to click OK. Now I'm physically adding this document to this task so I can reference it and I can actually see either how complete it is or what the progress is on that particular document. Maybe I need a signatures to be done. That's the only thing left. Well, I can click on that particular document and see what's going on. The one other advanced feature that I want to show you while I'm here is the ability to create a placeholder. So I'm going to create another task underneath the umbrella of inspections. So another common inspection that would be done would be a home inspection report. Okay, again, let's do relative. We can do 15 days. It's a little bit more complicated than lead-based paint. Again, we want to do, for simplicity's sake, we're going to do before and listing date as well, or sorry, date of contract. We're going to make this required. Make sure I'm selected. Make sure I'm selected there. Now, underneath attached documents, I have the ability to create a placeholder. What a placeholder is a ghost of a form or document or picture, what have you, something that is going to be sitting in your transaction until it gets replaced by the actual document itself. Okay, so I'm just going to name this home inspection report. I want this required, yes I do. Then click OK, and then click Save. Again, the idea here is creating this placeholder. The idea is that I'm going to be able to actually obtain this document at some point or another, and I'm going to import it into whatever transaction may be, and it will replace it, and thus I'll have that document, and thus the task essentially will be fulfilled in that particular sense of it no longer being an actual ghost of a form. It's the actual live form itself. Now, when it comes to those relative due dates that you saw, that time windows, the 12 or 15 days, and you saw me giving myself that time window. As soon as I enter that actual transactional due date into the transaction, that's when the timer will start. Okay, so that's why I strongly suggested you sticking with that relative, giving yourself a time window. Okay, because fixed, immediately as soon as you apply it to another transaction, 2 days from when it was due, it's already going to give you that past due date or expired task. So we added some common forms. We entered some common data. We've added ourselves some common checklists that would be broad enough to populate or be able to recycle across a multitude of transactions. That covers the scope of templates. Does anyone have any questions on templates? Okay. If you could just, if you want to put something in the chat box at the very bottom, if you do have a potential question. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is let's cover the rest of the navigation.
Hey, Chris, this is Steve. Actually, there was a question. It's actually, they're using the question box, the question feature. So if you look there, there is a question that is posted there.
Yeah, I don't see an actual question box for some reason.
I can read it off for you.
Okay, yeah, if you could, thank you.
Yep, no problem. So this question is from Jerry. Does the client get notified about upcoming tasks or due dates for them?
That's a great question, Jerry. Thanks for asking that question, by the way. The answer to that question is no. Unfortunately, the reason they don't is because they don't have access to your account the same way you do. And so the idea behind putting tasks or assigning an actual responsible party to it, is the idea is to either give yourself a reminder that you need to contact this particular individual, or if you have a broker style account, you can actually assign tasks to another individual and they would actually get notified of it. Okay, but because I'm working in an individual agent style account, I click on me, it'll identify what kind of account that I'm in. Because I'm in that individual agent account, I don't actually, unfortunately, have access to assign tasks, or they won't get reminders of my tasks that I'm signing. If that makes sense. Good question, though.
Okay, and there was a second question that's posed in that section, and this is from Mike. When I want to start a new contract, how do I select which templates I will use?
That's another good question. Well, the one thing you saw when I created a template is I did something underneath auto apply where I was able to choose when this template is being automatically applied. I had those three choices, right? Do not automatically apply, where I'm given that freedom to choose what gets applied to when. The second one is the one I actually chose in this case. You'll see it when I create a new transaction, where it's actually going to be automatically applying to that style of transaction, given I'm answering those two questions properly after creating a transaction. So if you create a brand new transaction, you're presented with the capability to select a template whenever you need to by default. Okay, whether something automatically applies or doesn't, you're still always going to be given, let me show you really quickly, it might be a little bit easier. You're always given that freedom to be able to choose what template gets applied to what. So you saw I picked listing there, and if I choose residential, this one's automatically applying here underneath here. But I also still have the capability to select any additional template I want. So I have something that's covering an industrial listing. I mean, in this case, wouldn't necessarily make sense, but I can always choose multiple templates to apply to multiple transactions. Okay? Or one transaction, rather. Good question, though.
Okay, and they're all the questions they have right now.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that, Steve.
No problem.
So the rest of the navigation we kind of, let's dive into really quickly. Templates, we kind of dove into that a little bit. Now I want to dive into contacts. And tasks and contacts, we have the ability to integrate with cloud-based services. This kind of dives into that more advanced kind of features that I wanted to show you all, and the ability to integrate your contacts or your tasks with either Google, Microsoft, Yahoo, or Top Producer within contacts. Okay, it's very common for everyone to have multiple contacts or start out with Google and Microsoft, and they get ZipForm Plus and they want to integrate their contacts. Okay, what this is going to do is I simply click on Google Contacts, and if I move this window over here, I'm given the ability to choose which of my Gmail accounts I want to have access to. I'm going to do this one here. And then now, because it automatically knew what my password is because I saved it, otherwise I would just enter my credentials. Let me show you what I mean by that. Sign in again, enter my password, and whatever the password may be, you simply type it in and you click next. And then now what happens is your contacts from Gmail or Google will be shown here. Okay. And then you can see all of your contacts. You can import to ZipLogics if you would like, which essentially what that means is you're copying all your contacts from Gmail or Google and pasting them into your ZipForm Plus account. Or you can just kind of do what you have here, which is you're able to pull data in from the contacts, but not having to have that full breadth of integration, which some people like that idea, or some people want the full integration, which you can certainly do that. Okay. Any point you can always switch between the different contacts and you'll see go back to your different contacts. Okay. So the next couple ones I want to talk about is partners and then the help. I'm going to skip over shop and do that one last. So partners here, similarly with tasks and contacts, you're able to integrate your ZipForm Plus account to make it a little bit easier to work in tandem with your ZipForm Plus account, things like Backagent, or even ones that are a little bit more subtle like BombBomb. And you can see this is the one that we're going to be doing today, which is DocuSign. But the idea here is, again, to make yourself a little bit easier and make things a little bit more seamless and workflow easier for you. BombBomb is a pretty good one. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with BombBomb. That's a pretty cool one. The Help tab here, you have access to 4 particular items: support material and live training. Let me exit out of this full screen mode really quickly, and I'll show you what happens if I click on support material or live training. It directly links you to our website. In this case, the support material links you right to our ziplogics.com/support page, which gives you access to top 4 frequently questions, or you can click on any one of these major categories and then view our robust knowledge base of articles, short videos that would be tied to those articles, basically being able to show you or answer whatever question you may have about the platform. Okay. Now, the second one, which is live online training, brings you to our website here, which gives you access to our training webinar calendar, which is kind of what we're doing here today. But it gives you access to this. Okay. So if you want to attend every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, we do a learning phase, a beginning learning phase. So say after today you're like, I really wanted to learn more about the TMS functionality. Well, by all means, sign up for any one of those. Those happen every Tuesday. Okay. So they're going phases, as you can see. Phase 1 is for those new users. Phase 2 is for intermediate. Phase 3 is for advanced. And then finally, we have a broker path solution as well. Okay. Now, the other 2 come in the form of in-app guided help and send us feedback. In-app guided help, I'm going to show us here on transactions, because if you're a more beginning user, even more than just want to see what it does, we can click on the guided help icon in the bottom right-hand corner, which is equivalently the same if we click on in-app guided help, as you'll see. And we're presented with a launchpad here, this guided help launchpad, where we can have access to getting started, which is more knowledge-based articles, where we can click on this and it links us right to there. We can do videos, which gives us videos, or we can do even guides. These are PDF guides that you can download and you can print if it's a little bit easier to have paper in front of you. And then finally, my favorite is these walkthroughs, okay, where I simply click on create a new transaction, and it literally walks me through step by step of how to create a brand new transaction. Okay, we have this interactive live tour. Okay, and then I simply click the green next button, and now I'm presented with the first question I'm asked, right, with creating a transaction. I can do purchase or offer, or I can simply click on the green next. And then it gives me this window here. Okay, and I can end the tour at any moment if I want by clicking end tour. And the last one, and quietly my favorite one, is to send us feedback. The reason I like this one is because I like to hear everyone's feedback. I want to hear the positive feedback, and hopefully more positive than negative, but the idea here is that the system is built for you as the agent or broker, right, and the association. So anyone, we want to hear your feedback. Again, the idea here is the platform is built for you. You guys are the ones using it day in and day out, so we want to make it the best possible experience for you all. So please send us feedback. If you guys have suggestions or concerns about a particular thing, we want to hear it. Okay. So that is going to end the navigation bit of today's webinar. Now let's dive into some of the other cool aspects of it. We did templates. We did some of the other more advanced features where we did some of the cloud integrations, but now I want to dive into some of the more advanced ones, which is, let's do the DocuSign integration right now. And I'm going to do MLS Connect and DocuSign all in one breath, which is really nice. So I'm going to click on New. So I'm creating a new transaction. Excuse me here, it's just loading. Click on New. And again, I'm presented with question number 1, right, which is select a transaction type to get started. Well, I'm going to choose listing. I'm going to continue along the same path that we did to apply that template that we wanted, right? So I'm going to make sure, so I'm going to enter a particular address. Okay, in this case, it's going to be, we're going to do MLS Connect first, rather, I'm sorry. Now I have access to a couple different MLSs. You all may have access to Bright most commonly. And the good thing about Bright is that you guys don't have to enter a username and password. You guys don't have to enter credentials, which is really nice. Some do. In the event you do, just simply enter your credentials that you would enter into the MLS website. Okay. So then the key with MLS Connect is entering an active listing ID. Okay, it needs to be active. If it's not active, it kind of defeats the purpose of what we're doing. I do always like to include a property photo, and then I'm going to click Find. And then the idea here with MLS Connect is you have 3 modes, and the one I'm doing here is the pull. You have push, pull, and updater. With pull, what I'm doing is pulling in MLS data from their website inside ZipForm Plus. Push is I'm inside the MLS website and I'm pushing data from there to ZipForm Plus. Finally, the last one is updater, which is something that allows you to update the MLS listing actually through ZipForm Plus. So I'm going to click on Use Listing, and you can see here it's 2300 Old Sentinel Trail. And then this is a residential. And here's my template that gets automatically applied. So now I'm using 2 time-saving features all in one, which is phenomenal. And then I can click on Save. And it always tells me that I'm applying a template or using MLS Connect. Okay, so I have this property summary information. So I created a brand new transaction, right? I didn't enter any data yet into it except for the address of the property. Well, I have with MLS Connect all my data populated here for me. I've even listing summary information, which is great. I even have party information, which helped populate some of the fields with either my information or the listing broker information in this case. Okay, now if I go to Documents, here's all my documents here. And additionally, with the population of the transaction summary page, I'll also have information populating here in my transaction cover sheet. So here's the listing broker information. It did recover our own, which is good, which is what we want, which is okay in this case. And we have property summary information. So before I even do anything with an actual transaction, adding any forms or anything like that, I have forms, I have data, and I have relevant data that's being inputted into my transaction. So now all you have to do is simply enter some basic data into, say, a standard listing contract, and you're good to go. Right, sellers. So now we need to know who the sellers are. So let's just say it's going to be, let's do John Smith. Let's do something simple. Okay. Now we have John and Susan Smith, and again, because I entered it into this form, it's also going to translate to my parties tab as well as my transaction summary page. Okay, that's that flow of data, form to form, frontwards and backwards, and tab to tab, frontwards and backwards. Now say I want to enter data into these forms, but it's kind of cumbersome to see all this language in these particular forms, and I just want to simply enter data. Okay, well I can do that through this fast fill item here. And it gives me just a brief description of that particular field, and I can enter data here. And say that looks like an FHA loan. Let's see if there's something like that down here. Or we know listing broker name. Let's just say it's going to be Hobby Broker. We know the listing commission is going to be like 6% or 3%, something like that. What have you, whatever data you want to enter in there. We can click Save. And if you ever want to go back to that viewer mode where you can view the language to get a little bit more description of what's going on, you can click that viewer fast fill mode and you can get back to this. Okay. And we click back. Now say I need to add some more additional forms, right? Because I have template data that covers the broad spectrum of any listing residential, but I need to add some additional forms. Let's say there's a pool in the background or in the backyard. I need to add an addendum. Let's add an addendum. I can either search. Let's use this general addendum. Or if I know that I'm covering the listing side, I can click this drop down here underneath the search bar, and I can click on listing, and it gives me access to all my listing particular forms. Okay, this is something that's relatively newer, but it's something that's pretty nice. Just a simple sort by category, general category of what kind of forms you want to be working with. Okay, because when I used to work in the customer care center, I used to get questions all the time. Is like, what would be, especially from newer agents, and they want to ask us why they have us on the phone. What would be some forms that we should be adding that would make most sense for a purchase? Well, unfortunately, we're not real estate agents, but we want to give you guys the best possible answer to your question, so we developed this. So we have a purchase, and it covers the whole spectrum of any purchase style form or listing form in my case here. Okay. So I have this general addendum. So I added just this basic addendum. I'm just going to label this a pool addendum. Okay.
I did get one question,
Yeah.
Chris, if you want to take it. This is from Andrew. Why wouldn't the seller's names auto-populate from Bright?
We unfortunately don't control what information gets populated into the forms. That's through Bright. Just unfortunate. Sometimes some MLSs do want to populate that data, others don't. So that's not unfortunately something we can control. So I know we're constantly evolving the partnership and the integration between MLS and us, and we get feedback just like that, and we could always send that to Bright and be like, hey, we're getting a lot of communications where we want the seller information to populate, and they're like, okay, we'll turn that feature on. We'll supply that data as well. Okay, it's just unfortunate we don't control that piece of information because it's not us. We're literally just copying data from one to the other, but we don't control what comes over essentially.
And there's one other question, but again, I'm not sure if this actually is more about the forms or about the system. This is from Suzanne. What's the difference between General Addendum 1, 2, 3, and 4?
Well, that's a good question. I can actually answer that. The difference is because in any addendum that you have, one of the problems that you used to run into is that you would have a need for multiple addendums. Well, you need to have addendum 1, addendum 2, addendum 3, and these are all these forms were supplied to us from the associations. So they got a lot of feedback from their agents saying that we need multiple addendums because in this case you see I have a pool addendum, and this general addendum covers the scope of a general addendum. Well, say I have something that's also that covers lead-based paint addendum or something else that would cover underneath the umbrella of addendum. Well, you need to have access to a couple different ones. So they give you access to those where you can kind of change it. But you can only ever add 4 in their case. That's how much they want you to only add. If you need something else, you can always contact the association and ask them, yeah, I have my max limit of addendums. Is there something else I should be using, or is there a better way I can be doing this? That would be the question that you can ask them.
And ultimately by association, just to clarify, you mean by the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors,
correct,
who are the form
yes,
providers. Yep.
Correct. Yep. Okay,
that's all the questions right now.
Okay, good, thank you. So one of the more advanced tips I want to talk to you guys about here is I showed you one of the more form tools, which is Fast Fill. The other one I want to show you guys, which I really like, is photos. Okay, where I have access to adding a photo to an addendum or any form. You guys say I have this pool addendum, and this pool in the backyard, say it has some imperfections in it. And I want to make sure that the buyers are known of these imperfections before they purchase it. I'm not, making sure that everything's all good to go. So I'll just say, as an agent, sellers want to sell pool as is. Imperfections include cracks in liner, and deck needs to be rebuilt and up to code. Right? Well, the thing that I want to be able to do here is attach a photo. Because with today's technology, you can snap a picture and you can send it to someone very quickly or upload it to social media. Well, we added a cool feature where we can add a photo to a particular document, thus making it a little bit more clear in what it is you're talking about. In this case, I'm just using a pool addendum here as an example, but this works phenomenally well if you're showcasing like the seller's disclosure, like you have the kitchen, you take a picture of the kitchen and everything is displayed there, or what have you. You can use any example. And I just want to attach a photo. I'm going to, let's do pictures. Here's my backyard pool. Click open and click OK. And now you see this little green mark in the upper left-hand corner that says this photo was attached. Now the benefit of this particular item is whenever you go to send, email, or print documents, this photo is automatically going to be attached. So let me explain where you're going to see that. So if I click on preview, this preview icon, for those of you who don't know, is essentially the same thing as sending out or looking at a print preview. Okay, so that's the idea behind preview. So I have my addendum here, and then I also have this picture of a pool. Okay, now this one's a little bit nicer than the one I actually inputted where it has cracks in the imperfection, but maybe there is. Okay, let's just say there is. We can use our imagination. And then we click on the X to close out of it. So those are some little nifty, quick, advanced features that we have here. Now, say we need to add more forms to this particular document. We have standard listing contract, option to purchase, lead-based paint. Well, let's say we need to add some more Pennsylvania forms. Let's say we need to add seller's property disclosure statement. This is one that is very common, right? Where you have to have the sellers enter all this data. This is a fun one, right? Because you have to have the sellers do all this information. Well, and you can see here information on here is not necessarily I can enter. Well, the cool thing with DocuSign is that we can have our sellers fill this out through the e-sign solution, which in this case is DocuSign. So let's get to that. So if I have all my documents filled out and ready to go. I want to simply click on our e-sign button. Okay. Actually, let me take a step back. Let me show you guys how to integrate DocuSign within your ZipForm Plus account first. Let's start with that. Just take a quick moment. So we're going to take a quick sidestep here. We're going to click on the Me icon in the upper right-hand corner, and then we're going to click on Profile and Settings. And then it's going to load up my settings for my ZipForm Plus account. These are all different kinds of settings that you can manipulate or customize to your whim, where you can attach those partners or, in this case, DocuSign to your account. And you fall on this About Me tab, and everything falls underneath your navigation bar. So there's this gray bar, all these different settings you can customize. These particular settings that you see here, About Me, Sign-in Security, and Offices, these all come pre-populated for you based off of the information you enter when you create a brand new ZipForm Plus account. Okay? And for those of you, I just want to make a very quick note on this. If you ever need to update company information, say you move offices or you the office location, you're still with the same company, but the office moves to a different location. If you change information inside ZipForm Plus here in the settings, this particular office's location, it's only going to be effective on new transactions that get created, thus trying to keep the integrity of the old transactional data that's stored inside of them. Okay. So back to the DocuSign integration, I want to simply click on Settings. And I have ZipForm Plus ZipLogix Digital Link attached to here. But say I have DocuSign. I want to click on DocuSign here. I want to link my DocuSign account by clicking Link DocuSign Account. And then it will be presented with a window, just like this one here. I enter an email address, and then click on Continue, and then enter a password. This password is not something that we generated ZipLogix. This is something that DocuSign has. As you see DocuSign, you have to enter DocuSign credentials. That's the same thing with our Google integration that we had, right? You had to enter those credentials, or MLS Connect. These are all outside credentials that you're entering. So keeping within theme. Click Login, and it says your account was successfully linked. So now we can use DocuSign freely within our account. The other added benefit is that we don't have to attach anything else. We don't have to switch our signing service at any point. Okay. But say we have we want to jumpstart to our e-sign, where previously we were on Documents here. We can click on this e-sign button here. But if you're a little bit more knowledgeable within the platform, you can use one of the transaction summary launchpads, which is over to the right here when you simply click on Sign. And jump starts to here. Okay, where we want to click on New, which is our e-signature packet page. Now, with here, what we land on is the first step of signing any e-sign solution within ZipForm Plus, which there's two: ZipLogic, Digital Ink, and DocuSign. So we're presented with option number 1 here, which is adding forms to our e-sign packet. So I'm going to go with let's go with the standard listing contract, and let's go with the seller's property disclosure. Okay, and then if I need to add an external document, I can simply do that by clicking on Add External Document, browse for a document here, and I can look for documents here, or even if they happen to fall in your downloads, which is probably where typically they would fall, click on Pool Addendum and click OK, and then we click Close, because the biggest difference here I want to show you is, you see the triangles in the bottom right hand corner? There's one red one and there's two blue ones. The two blue ones are representative of internal documents. These documents are from within the system. These are your association documents, these are your company forms, these are your MLS forms, what have you. These are all internal. The reason I'm mentioning these is these documents will help populate e-sign, as well as within the platform, the flow of data, right? So you have the flow of data and you have the auto tagging or pre-tagging through the e-sign solutions, Digital Ink or DocuSign. These external ones, they're documents that you upload in the platform where unfortunately they don't help populate the other forms, and they also don't populate automatically through ZipLogic's Digital Ink or DocuSign. The reason they don't is because there's no way that the systems, or either one of the systems, will know where that needs to be tagged. So it gives you that option to be able to select where those signatures get applied. And it's very easy to do. It's just, unfortunately, as the technology evolves, at some point I'm sure that will be a possibility, but right now it's just not. So underneath selecting forms, option number 1 here, we want to always name the packet. So I have 3 forms here. Let's just use the form names as something that's unique to the forms. So I'll just do SL, which is standard listing contract, and let's just do SLC. Then I have the seller's property disclosure, and then I have my pool addendum. I'll just do PAF, pool addendum form. Now our signing service, DocuSign, because that was, we changed those settings. And then now what we can do is move to the next step here by clicking the green next button. If you want to move back, you can always do that as well. Now with this particular page here that you see, the next step, which is selecting parties to add to this signature packet, the key thing to note here is that even though we have many different parties here, not all of them need to sign those 3 documents. So we want to make sure that we're selecting the parties and the documents that are relevant to each other at this particular moment. Otherwise, that's kind of like calling a particular individual down to your office to sign documents. It doesn't need to do anything. Okay, think of it as the same way. So I'm going to click on John. Let's enter his email address. And we're going to do Susan Smith here, the same thing. And then I'm going to, for the sake of this particular one, I'm just going to remove this here and just put myself. Okay, and myself, and then click on Close. Now there's a few key pieces of information I want to talk about here. Okay, and it's signing order and email. So, and this works for either one of the e-sign solutions you have. The first one is signing order. You can choose whichever signing order you want them to fall in. So think of this as you're standing in line at Starbucks. Okay, so it's a sequential order signing, meaning John has to place his order, he gets his coffee, and then he leaves, and then Susan gets serviced with her placing her order, and then her coffee, and then finally me, myself. Okay, this works in the same way. Now, if you want to ignore that sequential order signing, so say we want to add an additional cashier, for example, we can click on this drop-down and click 1. So now we have John and Susan getting the same, they're placing the order for their coffee at the same time, so to speak. Okay. Now, the second thing I want to talk about here is email. You can have the same email attached to multiple parties, and because it's very common, right, to have, say, maybe an older couple have the same email address. Say one's more tech savvy than the other, and they want to add, they were buying or they're selling their house, and they have one email address. The reason you can have that is because it's very easily, clearly differentiated between the two. Who needs to sign what and when? In the email itself, it will say, hey, you have documents you're ready to sign. John Smith, please sign here. No, Susan, please click here to sign your documents. Something like that, right? So to move to the next step, to DocuSign, we want to click on the green Next button. Just give this a moment to load. And you can see our documents are loading here, which is perfect. So here we have, you can see there's 3 documents: standard listing contract, seller's property disclosure, and pool addendum. Well, the standard listing contract, this one's pretty simple. So we can see that there's initials down here in the bottom right-hand corner where they would need to sign, and we have signatures where they would need to place their signatures. Okay, now moving on to the seller's property disclosure. This is that fun one, right, where we want our sellers to actually fill out all these pieces of information. Well, here's the seller information, and here are all the fields that they need to fill out. Okay, you can see this automatically populating. This is what it should look like on their end as well, and we're going to look at that in a few moments. Okay. And all these fields are optional. They should be checking each one. You should be telling them that you need to be selecting each one or whichever ones are applicable to you. And if there's something that is applicable, they can fill this in here in the text. Okay. Now let's jump down to this pool addendum. Okay, this pool addendum here, hypothetically, let's just say, excuse the names here, it's just an uploaded document, but it's going to work the same. So say John Smith here, left click, drag and drop, John's name fits there, Susan's corresponding would fit here, and then mine would fit here. So again, if you're choosing, and because this didn't populate, we can always manually add signatures, initials, or different names or text boxes, check boxes, what have you, to these different documents. So it's pretty simple to do. Just takes a little bit of extra work on our part in order to make sure that the documents are being signed appropriately by the appropriate individuals, right? And you just need to make sure that you're selecting the proper individual, and they're all color-coded. You can see John's are in yellow, Susan's are in blue here, and then mine are all in purple. And then once we're good to go, we have everything ready to go, we can simply click on the yellow send button in the upper right-hand corner. And this is thank you for using DocuSign. Now what we can do is...
Can I interrupt just for 1 second? So there was a question that's kind of related back to the seller's disclosure, and I think it's appropriate for you. It's from Tanya. On the seller's disclosure, is there a way for a seller to expand the lines where they fill in information?
Yeah. If you're talking about through DocuSign, right? That's what I'm assuming she's referring to. You can expand the fields and make them a little bit bigger or smaller. Same with signatures. If you want to make them a little bigger, you can certainly do that.
Okay. That's the only question.
Okay, cool. So let me sign into my Gmail account so you guys can see the emails coming through from DocuSign. I'm going to pull my account over here for you guys to see. So here's this one here, Earl Sentinel Trail. And again, you see here it says, hello, Susan, you have documents you're ready to sign. And it says, hello, John, you have documents you're ready to sign. Okay, so these are why you can have the same email address attached to multiple people, husband and wife. And say, for example, Susan's at work and she has the capability of signing right now or on her lunch break because John is at home watching the kids, right? And you know, with little toddlers, you have your time is consumed with entertaining them. We want to click on Review Documents. And the first thing presented when you start signing documents is the ability to agree to their electronic records, their license agreement, or the legal consent. Okay, you simply want to click on Agree and then click on Continue. And the cool thing with DocuSign is that it can start at any point by clicking the Start button. And then it immediately jumps you to the first spot where you would need to sign or initial or perform a particular task. Now, the thing with DocuSign here is once you click on the very first initial signature or task, you're going to be presented with this window where it says Adopt Your Initials, where you actually get to choose what initials you want to either create, draw, or adopt. Okay, so if you want to select this one, this is the one that's by default. You can choose that one, or we can draw our own. Now, this one, when you're drawing your own, this works a little bit better if you are working on a touchpad. I'm doing it with my mouse, so it's not phenomenal. I'm not an artist. So you can always clear it, and then you can always go back and you can change your style. You can choose from one of their different styles. Let's do this one here, for example. And then we can adopt an initial, and then it's signed, and then it automatically jumps me to the next spot where I would need to sign or initial. And I think here it's jumping me right to the next steps because seller number one, in this case, John, is the one who's going to fill out these boxes here. Thus eliminating, it assigns it to the first one simply to eliminate another person overriding it. So it limits it to one particular individual. So just FYI. And then we click on Finish. And then we can know things. I want to save a copy because I'm going to get a copy at the very end. And then we're done. And now we can move to John's. So this is going to take a moment to load. There we go. Continue. We want to start. The same steps here. So if you guys have any questions, you guys are free to ask them there now, because it's going to be the same steps corresponding to the appropriate parties here. So it's very identical. And then the last thing I'm going to do is show you some really cool nifty tips and tricks, like the lookup field manager and a couple other things when we get done with this one here. I'm going to change my style here. Let's go with, let's do this one. Adopt an initial. And jumps me to the next step. Now here's the seller's disclosure. So this is that fun one, right? And what I have to do here, and it immediately jumped me to the next step, but I have access to filling out these particular fields. So I can just simply click on any one of these fields, and then automatically fills in those check boxes for me. Or if I have to expand something, and this is where one of you guys were asking a question where if I need to expand a field, I can do that. The good thing is DocuSign, what it does is even if you type something to the very end, it does kind of shrink it a little bit, but that's where you may need to adjust it. But it just kind of depends on how lengthy they are. You know, it's one sentence, so really you want to limit it to that if need be. So it kind of works in collaboration. You just want to make sure you're letting people know. I'm just going to continue. I don't need to demonstrate to you how to fill out a seller's disclosure. But you can see that all these boxes are fillable. Sign, and we're finished here. No thanks. Now the last one, okay, because we put myself as the last person to sign, now this jumped up from 2 to 3. I'm going to open up this, and here's me. I'm going to go through this one pretty quickly here. I'm just going to leave it to the default so we can get through it, and then click Finish. Now what's going to happen is two things. The first thing that you're going to get is you're going to get an email. Okay, you're going to get an email that allows you to access all your documents when they're completed. Okay, so this is exactly what just happened. So very quick. So we have access to viewing our completed forms, and we're seeing 2 more messages, which means these other 2 parties also have access to viewing their signed documents, which are completed. The other thing that we get to see, I'll show you here in a moment, is back to our ZipForm Plus account. You're going to see we're going to actually get a completed packet within our Old Sentinel Trail transaction, giving us access to all those signed documents. Okay. And see, here's that folder. And you see the name? That's the unique folder name that we chose. Now we have access to this particular, say, standard listing contract, and we can open it up and we can see the actual signatures in progress. Or completed, rather, not in progress. Okay?
Okay, Chris, there's 2 questions that have come up. I'm going to do the second one first. It's from Jerry. Sometimes the completed docs are attached to the email. Sometimes they are not. What's the difference?
So Jerry, what you're saying is that when the emails, when you complete the documents, you're not getting the signed copies. I wonder if are you the one creating the packet, or is someone else having you complete and sign the documents? Because depending on where the account falls, like in my case, this account that I'm using,
she said she created it.
Oh. Like you're saying, I wonder if she's referring to the documents are falling not into ZipForm Plus, but they're falling into DocuSign or the email. Is that what you're referring to?
I'm awaiting perhaps another typed response.
Okay. If it's strictly through the email, unfortunately, that would be something you really would want to contact DocuSign. I couldn't necessarily answer that in terms of why. But you saw it demoed here today, and it literally dropped into my email inbox in seconds. As soon as
and she said it's via the DocuSign completed email.
Yeah, so what I would do is I would contact DocuSign. One, I would make sure that the emails that you're sending out are in fact yours and then they're spelled correctly. That's a pretty common error I used to run into in the customer care center, where it's instead of gmail.com, it's Gmail with 2 L's or without the L or something like that. And maybe that's a common pitfall that people run into. But outside of that, contact DocuSign, unfortunately.
Okay. And then the other question, it's kind of more of a general question, just to remind folks, and this is from Dave, if you can go back to the screen where you merge your ZipForm with DocuSign again.
Mm-hmm.
I guess just walk them through that step. So again, just kind of remind them how they got there. I think it's just kind of more about how, again, just reminding people how they can access this.
Okay, no problem. So how to do that is by clicking the Me icon in the upper right-hand corner. Mm-hmm. Okay, and then click on Profile and Settings. And then right underneath the navigation bar, this dark blue bar, that constant bar, you've seen it throughout the entirety of today's webinar. Right underneath that is a gray bar, and you want to click on Settings. Okay, bring you here. The first set of options is e-signature options. So you're only given 2 choices: e-signature for ZipLogic Digital Ink, which is our own version of DocuSign, or you have DocuSign. Click on DocuSign, and then you have to either sign up for DocuSign, which you can do through us, or if you have an existing DocuSign account, you simply, I'll unlink mine and then relink it. You're presented with link existing DocuSign account. Click on that. I don't know why let's keep putting it over there, but this window pops up, and if you don't see this window, let me click off this really quickly. I'll bring this back. Say this window here, you don't necessarily see it. You want to make sure that you don't have a pop-up blocker that maybe is blocking it. So you may want to check that first. Okay, so that's a pretty common pitfall that people run into. And then you simply enter your credentials, click login, and then you're given a notification that your account was successfully linked. Okay.
And again, just a reminder, Suburban West members, of course, get DocuSign as a benefit. So certainly you avoid doing the get DocuSign subscription, because then you're going to actually end up paying for something that you're already getting.
Exactly. So yeah, don't do that. Yeah. We don't want you to pay more money than you guys have to. So.
Exactly. Okay, that's all the questions right now.
Okay, cool. So now I want to talk about a couple more, the more subtle advanced features. So you saw a couple of things that I mentioned before, like the Smarty Streets technology, which helped populate the forms, but you also had something that was called the Lookup Field Manager. Okay, let me show you what the Lookup Field Manager looks like again, just really quickly. So in any field that you're populating information into, whatever it may be, you're going to be given information in the drop down here, or if on a particular document, say a cover sheet or any document, you're given a drop down. Let me make this full screen here, make it a little bit better. Okay, in any field, I don't know why it's not doing it. What's going on here? Let's go back for a second. Let's do, I'll show you what this looks like. On a cover sheet here, you'll see this drop down. This is what I was referring to. Maybe it's just a browser issue while the other ones wasn't showing, but you see this drop down window here. I can select this drop down and have access to all the common names or individuals I've entered into any one of my forms. Okay, you have access to this on any form. Apologize, there was a small little glitch on the other one, but you have access to this drop down. This is called the Lookup Field Manager. This is what tracks this data. If you say, for example, you have information, say this Laura lady, okay, she's no longer an agent of yours or something, and you don't want to see your name there, or maybe her last name isn't Lady, it's there's an S there, or it's misspelled, and you want to correct that. You can do that through the Lookup Field Manager. You go to Transactions, and on the Transactions Home landing page, you click on Transaction Tools, and we have access to the Lookup Field Manager. Now, the cool thing with this is we can edit and manipulate anything that you see within those form fields. So, for example, there's Buyer 1 email. That's what B1 email is. We can edit these emails, or in our case, it was Buyer 1 name, right? We had Bob Buyer, and here's that Laura lady. If we don't want to see her name there anymore, we simply remove it, and we click on Save. And then we can refresh our account, go back into that particular transaction or any form, and we won't see her name displayed in that drop-down list anymore. See? It's no longer displayed there. So that's one really nice advanced tool that you have access to that helps you populate the forms. Because I know before you used to have, some people used to have problems where they would enter, like say, one common name all the time or an email address. It's probably more applicable there. We may have misspelled an email address. Say, in my case, I put 3 L's instead of 2, and I just don't want to accidentally select it every time in my Lookup Field Manager. Well, I want to remove that. Now, the other one is called the Clause Manager. Okay, again, that's located on the Transactions Home landing page, and it's the Clause Manager here. To give you an idea what the Clause Manager is, let's take a page from the template book really quickly. The idea with templates, right, is to repurpose information from transaction to transaction. The Clause Manager does this from form to form, where we can populate information that's pretty generic. Say we have this pool addendum here. You see here, any imperfections in documents must be completed and made aware of these things prior to closing of the contract, right? So that's some information that that's pretty common, that I want to help populate the rest of the documents. Well, I can do that through the use of this Clause Manager. Go into Documents, and this is the last thing, guys, so I promise I'll let you guys go after that. So we have this large amount of field that we can, or text that we can enter into this. Well, there's a pencil icon, and then we're given a Clause Manager icon here. The pencil, at any point, if you click on the pencil icon, allows you to edit something. Okay, that's the idea. We click on that clause manager, and now I have access to either my clauses that are presented to me from either ZipLogix or your association. Some associations do provide clauses automatically for you to help populate the forms, or you can create your own personal ones. Like I have my pool addendum here. It's the one I commonly use. That's why it populated first for me. All I have to do is insert this line of text. And then here you see it populated this line of text for me automatically. Okay? So it's something, it's these little things that may help you in the long run save yourself a lot more time. Okay? So that is going to conclude today's webinar. We covered everything. Let me make sure, let's go back over here really quickly. So at this point,
is there any final questions maybe if we want to just say again? I mean, we're fine going a little bit longer if anybody has any final questions they want to type in real quick. If not, then yeah, we can finish up. Okay, I don't see any, so I guess we'll move on. Okay, got one. Andrew Wetzel asked a question: can a broker add their own forms?
Yes, you can. Yep, you can. Unfortunately, I mean, there is a cost associated with that. If you would like, the best people to get a hold of is actually our sales team in regards to that. Do you have, my first question, I guess, is do you have a brokerage account already?
Yeah, and we do know that companies do have brokerage accounts. Some of our companies do. Certainly, the members are benefiting still from the free access to ZipForms, and those brokerages are as well. So it's just an additional cost to the brokerage if they want to add their own forms. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Yes. Yep. Okay. Any other questions?
Anything else you guys want me to show you one more time or dive a little bit deeper into? I know we covered a lot and we had we had 90 minutes and we got right to the last minute here. So if there's something you guys want me to show you guys again one more time, please feel free to do that. I'm more than happy to show you guys. The idea is here making sure you guys understand. Okay, cool.
Yeah, so again, just a reminder back to the group. Again, I'll be sending out an evaluation a little bit later on today. There'll be a link at that point to the recording that we're posting. So certainly feel free to share that link amongst your fellow agents who weren't able to be on live today. And certainly we thank your participation in today's program and the questions that were posed. And a thank you from the association to Chris for his time and effort today in presenting. Chris, any final words?
I just wanted to thank you guys for allowing us to demo this for you guys. I mean, I'm glad that you guys are able to utilize this, and hopefully you guys learned something pretty valuable and some of these great time-saving features we offer. Templates, the integration with DocuSign is a phenomenal one. So hopefully you guys have the best opportunity and good luck out there.
Okay, thanks a lot, Chris. Okay, everyone, have a great day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.